welcome to the death, etiquette, and grief video. I wish that I was not having to make this video, but here we are. I think American society has a very odd relationship with death. I think that we act as if the people who are experiencing loss are the exception to the rule, as if we get close to the grieving, somehow it's contagious and we might lose someone. But the fact of the matter is, none of us are getting out of here alive. So in fact, to act like death is this anomaly really is a disservice to everybody who experiences it, because you have two options. Either you experience death or you die before everybody else, right? And the fact that we are so afraid to talk about death in our society is a real hindrance to people who are grieving. It's a hindrance to our society and our community and the people in our community, because to not talk about something makes something worse. And when we give someone a day or a week to grieve and then assume somehow that they are better already, it makes those people who are grieving feel like they are weirdos, right? For still experiencing grief. And I'm going to be honest with you, grief is a forever process, and there's different waves to it, and there's different moments to grief. But if you think that when somebody dies, that's something that you can get over ever, I'm here to tell you that I don't think that's how it works. At least on a personal level, I can tell you that's not how my grief works. I am going to talk about some tips for people who are noticing the grieving people, because I think there's a lot of, I don't want to say bad behavior, I think there's a lot of missteps that people make when they're trying to be helpful or when they're curious, and it actually hurts the grieving. And maybe people are interested in what they actually could do to be helpful. And if they're not interested, maybe the people who are grieving can watch this video and think, I'm not alone, I've experienced that, or I've felt that way before. So let's just go over some do's and don'ts for what the etiquette is for if a friend or family member or someone you know has lost somebody. Number one, don't tell the grieving how to feel. I'm going to repeat that because it's very important. Do not tell the grieving how to feel. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say somebody says to someone who's lost someone, how are you feeling? And the person says, you know, I'm really sad and angry. And the person who heard that goes, you shouldn't be angry. That is not what to say to somebody. The grieving person has a right to feel however they feel, and it's not for you as an outsider or as a friend or as whoever you are to the grieving person. It's not for you to tell the grieving person how to feel. Those feelings of theirs might make you uncomfortable, but it's not your job to tell them how they can feel, because how they feel is personal. And if you ask somebody how they feel, don't then judge them for the answer they give you, okay? If you can't handle how somebody feels, don't ask them. It's that simple. So that's one thing. Another thing is protect the grieving. Protect the grieving, okay? And what I mean by that is you have to understand that the people who have lost somebody are in a very delicate place, and that place is very personal to them, and it's filled with a lot of different emotions. And it's your job as someone in their life to show kindness and compassion and empathy. It's not your job to do anything that is going to cause them more harm or more damage or more grief on top of grief, right? Because I know for a fact, as somebody who's experienced a lot of loss in my life, that people unintentionally say terrible things. So things not to say to the grieving. Things not to say to the grieving. Once upon a time, somebody very dear to me who I love, it was the day after a dear, dear person died. They were not even 24 hours dead when somebody told me, think about the people in Kosovo who've lost their whole families. Now here's the thing. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a sensitive person. So I do think about the world, and I do think about other cultures and other countries and war-torn nations and violence and shootings and bombs. I think about those things. I think about them. I read the news. I think about things and they hurt me. But here's the thing. In that moment, I was grieving somebody that was like a sister to me. So to be told that I should think about another tragedy that's worse than what I was experiencing, that was a painful message to get because it wasn't in line with what I was experiencing. And so I think in trying to help, sometimes people say, oh, well, it could be worse. It could be worse. Yeah, you're right. It always could be worse. But that's not respectful of what the person's going through to mention something else in that moment, right? So just be careful with what you tell people. Just listen and love them. Listen and love them. Let's talk about posting pictures for a minute, right? Posting pictures. We're in the age of social media. You want to share memories and photos, but you have to think a little bit. You have to think what's appropriate. And let me just list off some things that are not appropriate, okay? What's not appropriate to post of somebody if they are no longer here? Well, for example, somebody swigging from a wine bottle or doing shots, maybe not the time to do that, right? Maybe that's not acceptable. Maybe if someone was, well, I'll just do a personal example, right? Let's say tomorrow I, wasn't here anymore, right? I died tomorrow. Let's hope I don't, but let's just say that I did. Is it appropriate? This is a yes or no question. We're going to do a little quiz here. Is it appropriate to post a picture of me circa 2003? I'm in high school and I'm mooning people at Waffle House. Is that an appropriate picture to post after I die? Answer: no, that's correct. No, it's not an appropriate picture to post. Frankly, it's not really an appropriate picture to post if I'm alive, right? But you just have to think, who's going to see this? Is the person's family going to see this? Are the person's friends going to see this? I think here's a good rule of thumb. If the grandmother can't see the photo that you post, don't post it, okay? We have to be sensitive. We have to be sensitive right now when someone's grieving, and we don't need to be posting photos that are, if someone's flashing the camera, if someone's, I used to work at a rehab. If somebody is shooting up, are you going to post a photo of the deceased with heroin in their veins? No, you're not going to do that, right? So just really be thoughtful and mindful and say, would the grandmother approve of this photo? If the grandmother wouldn't approve, you got it. Don't post it. Don't post it, okay? Loving pictures. Pictures that are kind and loving and make the person look good, right? We want to respect the dead. We don't have to lie about the dead, but we also have to respect them. Okay? So that's one thing. Don't patronize the grieving. That's another thing. Don't patronize the grieving. I know from personal experience, again, people want to be helpful, but they end up saying things that are really patronizing, as if this is, again, I'll just talk from personal experience. Let's say I've lost multiple people in my life, right? Let's say, for example, I'm going to use real life examples here. How about I get a message from someone. They have my best interest at heart, but they send me a message that says, keep in mind as you're grieving this person, not to think about those other people that have died. Now, what's wrong with that sentiment? I'll tell you, good thing you asked. What's wrong with that is you don't get to control how that person feels, right? And I know that that's coming from a good place and you care and you don't want them to be overwhelmed, but it's not really your place to tell people how they can feel their experiences, right? So it's not up to you to tell people, don't think about those other people that have died. Because I can assure you that when somebody dies, for me anyway, of course I'm gonna remember the other people, especially if that goes back to my childhood, especially if I grew up with people, especially if those people were intermingled and related to each other, right? So I'm not living in a vacuum, just like I'm sure you're not. So everything is connected to everything. And to tell somebody, don't think about them, just think about this thing, isn't really your place to say. So don't Don't tell people how they can feel. Don't patronize them. Let them feel how they feel. And let's talk about messaging and sending love to the people who are grieving, right? Well, for starters, don't ask anything of the people who are grieving, okay? They have enough on their plate with what they're going through. They don't need demands put on them right now, right? So, you know, if you're asking for information, maybe find somebody else to ask, okay? Because I know in the past, not recently, but in the past, when I've lost a loved one, I felt like it was my responsibility to let everybody know the truth and to let everyone know what happened. And I realized all these people were coming out of the woodwork, and I thought it's my job to respect the person I lost. It's my job to set the record straight. But here's the thing. It's not my job, actually. I mean, I am a therapist, so I do, in fact, work with the grieving, and that is my job, right? But it's not my job to be the spokesperson for the dead. And so when people who I haven't spoken to in years start coming up and saying, well, what happened? Or, well, tell me, or this is what I heard, or what do you know? Or it's really upsetting for the person who's left behind to have to get these kinds of messages. And I understand curiosity, and I understand that we all want to know what happened to people, but there's been plenty of times in my life where I've seen a Facebook post and I thought, I wonder what happened to this person. I wonder what happened to this person, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But you know what I don't do? I don't ask that person directly, hey, you seem like you're having a tough time in life. Can I have the personal details of what's going on? Because that's not, you know, we're friends with a lot of people on Facebook, and they could be, you hopefully you like everyone you're Facebook friends with, but let's be honest, you're not necessarily best friends with everybody. So to be getting that kind of messaging about give me the scoop, it's not really appropriate to be asking for the scoop of the people closest to the situation. You're allowed to talk about whatever you want, but maybe don't come to the grieving people and demand information. It's really, really upsetting for those people, or for me. I'll speak for me. It's really upsetting to be getting messages inquiring about what happened to somebody, because I'm having to deal with my own grief in that moment, and I'm not really here to fill in somebody from 100 years ago with information. So that came off a little bit snotty, but that being said, it is very nice to receive loving messages, right? You know, I have had an outpouring of love from people in the times, in my times of loss, and those people are with me forever. If somebody sends me a message that is genuine, and you're probably going, well, this person's, Jordana's scary. What does she want you? What's appropriate to say? Well, let's delve into that. What's appropriate to say to somebody who's lost somebody? I'm sorry. I love you. I loved the person who's died. Here's a memory I have of you guys. Thoughts and prayers are fine. I care about you. I'm thinking about you. Know that I have you in my heart. Those are all beautiful things to say, right? And I truly think if you just are empathetic, if you're truly empathetic and you're not demanding anything, you can send a beautiful message, and that will be appreciated. It will be greatly appreciated. When I was 10, I will say this from personal experience. When I was 10, my dad died, and one of my friends, it was Liz, one of my friends said a simple sentence to me. She said, Jordana, I'm sorry your dad died, okay? And I'm 34 years old, and to this day, I remember that Liz said that, right? And I was 10. So I think a message can go a long way, and it's very much appreciated, because when we lose people, we want to know that other people knew how important that person was to us. We want to know that other people saw the beauty in that person, and that they got something from that person, that they admired that person, whatever the case may be. It feels good to receive those messages. It feels good. But here's something that you're not going to hear in every grief book, but I'm going to go ahead and let you in on a little secret. Take care of the people who are left behind, okay? Take care. A thing happens sometimes with the dead, and that is that we raise them to a status that is beyond human, right? People die and suddenly they're a martyr. And I can say it, being friends with them or being family members with the dead, I can say, I don't remember them being a perfect person. I remember them being a human being with foibles and mistakes and full of all these wonderful things and these contradictions. But it's really a disservice when we just act like the person who's dead is now, you know, a god. They're not. They were a human being who had imperfections like everybody else. And so that is actually damaging when we hear these ways about people that are like suddenly they're larger than life in a terms of like we don't even recognize who people are talking about because it's become so the word perfect is thrown around and you know, and so getting back to my original point, you don't have to make stuff up. Just showing up, just telling something honest and loving from a place of kindness from your heart, that's enough. The people that are left on earth mourning the people that they've lost, those are the people that you need to make sure feel loved and appreciated, okay? So how can you do that? Well, again, you can tell them you love them. You can, you know, send a sentence, send a simple sentence. You can send food. You can, anything you do, just, even if you just say, I'm thinking about you, period. I'm thinking about you. But not, I'm thinking about you, you better call me back. I'm thinking about you, you better tell me what happened. Da, 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 da. It's like, no, just a declarative statement and then let it go. Grieving takes a lot of energy and it's a full-time job, and we also probably have full-time jobs. So sometimes we just have to be honest with our grief, and I'll be the first to tell you, grief is not pretty. It's not a pretty process and it's not easy. So first-hand look, I'm just going to show you a real life moment. Grief is smashing your phone. You probably can't even see it. Grief is being irritated at everything. Grief is being mad at the world. Grief is being mad at the dead. Grief is hating everyone. Grief is being inconsolable. Grief is being furious. Grief is all around, and it permeates everything, and you're expected to go about your life because you have a job and you have friends and you have family and you have chores and things that you have to do that keep coming even though someone has died, and it fucking sucks. It fucking sucks. There's so much anger. Maybe not for everybody. But for me, for some parts of grief, there's a lot of anger. And it puts a strain on your relationships with the living, because everyone's dealing with it in their own way. And it sucks. Here's another thing that happens a lot, and this is a tricky one because it comes from a good place, which I would like to believe that most of these missteps actually do come from a good place. I think they do. Another thing that sometimes happens is I know that people can worry about the people who are grieving. They're worried because they've lost somebody, and they're worried that now their friend or their person that's grieving is now suddenly going to lose her mind, or everything, you know, we have to be careful. Is she getting enough sleep? Is she doing what she's supposed to? Is she acting wild? And the thing is, that's a lot of pressure when you tell a grieving person, make sure you get sleep, make sure you're taking care of yourself, make sure you're okay, because there's an inherent sort of demand in that, and telling a grieving person, go to bed, it's like, obviously it's useful to get sleep. I know it's useful to get sleep, but sometimes when we lose people, our sleep and our eating habits, and those are the first things to go. So just be careful when you're coming from a place of love and you're trying to take care of the person who's grieving. Make sure you don't put one more demand on them, because they know that they need sleep. Patterns are interrupted in grief. Acceptance is important. Accepting the living, accepting their reactions to things, showing up, supporting, and not asking for a whole lot, because there's going to be other times when you're going to need them and those people are going to show up for you. But sometimes you got to give people space to feel it. And here's another one that's sort of on the same subject. This happened to me, and again, came from a place of love, but 2 days after somebody died, I got a phone call from a friend, and we were talking, and maybe some of my anger was coming out, just my sadness and anger at the loss of somebody. And my friend starts to list things off to me about what I should start doing, like as if there was a solution to losing someone, right? So like, have you thought about, and I actually stopped the person because I knew where it was going, and I was like, no. But for example, have you, 2 days, let's do 2 days after you lose somebody, have you thought about doing yoga? What about reading? Have you thought about taking a class on meditation? I just lost somebody very close to me. So taking a yoga class isn't exactly where I'm at. And I understand that, especially men, but a lot of people, they want to make solutions. But here's the cold, hard truth. There isn't a solution for death. There is no quick fix. There is no solution. If somebody dies, you're going to feel how you feel, and any shortcut that you think you might have, that's fake. It means you're either doing drugs to not feel things, or you're pretending that everything's fine, and then you're going to have a nervous breakdown in 2 years. It's not okay, right? Like, the only way through grief is through it. And it stinks, believe me. I know if I've been through this experience before and it happens again, I already know. I already know how hard the journey is. But there's nothing you can say that's going to make it easier. In terms of, well, if you do X, Y, Z, you'll be fine. There's no recipe for grief, okay? Yes, go to therapy, feel your feelings, love yourself, be around people you care about. We're all doing the best we can, and you just have to support people, and support people with food or kind words, or, as I like to say, get out of their way, okay? Those are your options. Love people and demand nothing, or move out of their way so that they can have the grieving process and not have you jibber-jabbering about your ideas about how they should feel. Because they can feel however the fuck they feel, because that's grief. Just like if you lost someone, you can feel however you feel. That got a little hostile, but... So that's my message. I hope that y'all are handling this difficult time we're all in. I hope you're finding your way, and I hope you know that you're not alone. And any message of love and support is appreciated. I hope you know that, and just remember to be sensitive. Be sensitive to the grieving, be sensitive to your neighbor, be sensitive, because we never know what people are going through at any given time. Okay? So thank you for listening, and to be continued. Bye.